Our freedoms, we have the oldest democracy that's alive today. We are always seeking to be better. But it's what our freedoms will make us special. Government's role, first and foremost role, is to defend our freedoms. So I ask for your vote, I ask for your support, and know that I'm the guy. I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to campaign hard. But when it's all said and done, after the election, I shake hands. We work together for what's great, what's best for our country. And I am a believer that you take, if I can only agree with you on 50%, let's fashion a bill on that 50%. Let's move forward, and then we can debate the rest later on. But let's find areas of consensus that moves our country forward. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Councilman Bacon. Do you have time for a few questions?
I'll be glad to.
Okay.
Maybe one or two.
What, 1 or 2?
I got one more event tonight.
Okay.
I know Senator Blunt, who's a candidate for governor. I'm sure he got nothing else planned after this either.
If there's any questions, I guess I want to ask Congressman Don Bacon.
Yes, ma'am. I can tell you're taking notes. You're studious.
Oh, always. Hello, Lena Stover, and I am with the Heartland Workers Center,
Thank you.
where we advocate for immigrant and underrepresented communities. And your comment on the border struck with me. Beyond the border, what can we do to make the immigration system work for more people?
Well, I support expanded legal immigration. I think our country needs it. We need high skill, seasoned workers, low skill. I mean, our country needs it. Without immigration, we would have a declining growth rate in our country. In other words, we'd be below 2.0 children, and we would have economic stagnation. This is good for our country. We bring in people that hunger for freedom, they hunger for free markets. So I will support expanded legal immigration. Now, that's a problem with work is we're going to be, probably by the end of this year, be at 4 million people who've crossed and been released in the country. It doesn't cost the federal government that much, but it's a huge cost of local schools and cities. That's why Texas and Arizona are struggling down there right now. So I want to enforce the rules at the border. And here's the problem. If we don't enforce the rules there, it encourages more to come. And then these people are victimized. So it's not really being kind or merciful by not being hard at the border, because half of the women are being assaulted that are coming across the border right now. We've lost 750 people in the Rio Grande River. They've died. This is not being harmful, helping these people out in this way. So I think the president's got to get down, he's got to be serious about securing our border, and then give us the opportunity to expand legal immigration the way it's supposed to be done.
Right, but isn't the economic input that the immigrants are bringing in, both documented and undocumented, actually overcomes that cost that is happening at the national level?
There's clearly jobs. People want to have jobs. There's jobs out there. But it doesn't work that way for schools right now. The schools are struggling because they are getting that extra tax base, for example. So a lot of our local governments and particular schools do struggle with this. They're paying the cost. In the end, my commitment is we can secure the border. I will always be a supporter for expanded legal immigration. Of course, I support DACA. I support TPS. These kids came here, no fault of their own, and TPS, they've been here for 20 years, married to families, and are working, they're doing a great job.
Yeah, and TPS people are also paying every 2
Yep.
years to get their benefits. So it would be nice to have some permanent solutions.
Yeah, and I voted for DACA and TPS, so.
Thank you. Do you have time for one more question?
Yes, you got one in the corner.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Congressman, my name is Dev Loma, and I'm a young professional here in Omaha, Nebraska. I came in this country 11 years ago as an immigrant. I came here illegally. I actually went to college here at the University of Nebraska, and I started working in the private industry for about 4 years. So my question is for those people that come in America legally and start to come into the workforce. What plan do you have for them to just be more accepted in the workforce and just be more comfortable and have access to more work?
Can I just make sure I'm hearing right? You said legally?
Legally,
got it.
yes, legally, and end up staying and have family and be legally and be being American as well.
Well, we should accept, okay, first of all, we're all creatures of God. I believe God created us all. We're all equal in his vision. So we got to just start from that premise. And I think all the community's got to reach out and make sure that everyone feels welcome. This isn't really by laws, it's by action. It's people being people, living our faith, showing God's love to other people. I don't think a law changes what you're asking for, but we just need to make sure that all of us are welcoming to all ethnic groups here. And we appreciate you're here. Where are you working? Okay, well, I mean, you make our country better. And I think people just need to hear that. And I'll share some of my stories. Like, for a while, the two best heart doctors in Omaha was from India. We benefit from bringing in great talent. People want to work hard. They want to provide for their families. So I know our country benefits from that. We just got to make sure that we're emphasizing the legal side of it and the rule of law. But we want the American dream for everybody, to include you. So, okay, I appreciate y'all's time.
Thank you so much
One more
for your
yet.
time.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
I've lost you. There you are. Okay.
You lost down here.
Let me close on this. I ask for your support, ask for your vote. Grateful. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Alright, so we have our next candidate here, Senator Tony Vargas.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. How's everybody feeling? Good. Okay. Well, I appreciate you very, very much. My name is Senator Tony Vargas. I'm proud to be the state senator representing District 7 in downtown and South Omaha. And I want to thank you for being here because I'm running for Congress for Nebraska's 2nd District. Now, one of the most important reasons why I'm here is because you are part of this summit. You are attending, you believe in leadership, you believe in entrepreneurship, you believe in solving problems, you believe in getting things done. And I'm going to tell you the thing that I really want to make sure to do is talk about my vision for how to accomplish that. And also why I believe I'm the best candidate to represent this district. Now, I was here not trying to intrude, but one of the things that's very, very important to me is actually solving problems. And here's the reason why. I'm the proud son of immigrants. My parents came to this country with very, very little to nothing. And when you come to this country, you believe in the American dream, you fight for it. You fight to make it better, you fight to invest in it. And when you see your parents working 2 or more jobs and being able to do everything they can, sacrificing for you, that's what they did for me, you take it to heart. That's why I became a public school science teacher. That's why when I had the opportunity, I started serving my community as a teacher, teaching other students just like me. But we grew up in poverty. I know what working families are going through. And that's the reason why not only was I a teacher, I became a staff teacher, coaching teachers all over the country. And then I worked in schools, improving outcomes for students, working with teachers and principals. And I became a school board member for Omaha Public Schools. And for the last 6 years, I've been a state senator. I've been a proud state senator representing downtown and South Omaha. Now, the reason this is important for why I'm asking for your support and also for what you were here for is I believe things can be different when we start electing people that actually represent all different walks of life and everyday people in Nebraska. But they're not going to be different if we continue to send people to Congress that, quite frankly, sound a lot more like politicians. And here's the best example I can tell you. For the last 6 years, I have been working across the aisle to try to get things done in this state. Because I'm a proud Democrat, but I've been elected by both my Republican and Democratic leaders to be one of the leaders in the legislature. Now, in the legislature, I've been the vice chair of the executive board for the last 4 years. I've been the only person of color ever elected to this position. I've been a member of our budget committee. I'm responsible, one of the 9 people, to shape our budget for billions of dollars to make to make Nebraska a better place, to invest in education and healthcare and jobs, and to make sure we're investing back in you. And I did that by making sure we're making the right investments, making government more efficient, and actually controlling our spending where we can. And also because of that, I was able to provide some significant relief to working families, not only in tax relief, for Social Security, for income and property, while also still investing in you. If you're here, if you're a small business owner, or you're a working parent, or you're somebody that's trying to make ends meet for you or your family, I've been fighting on your behalf. Now, the thing that I can ask you is this. The reason I'm running for Congress is, and I'm going to make a guess. One, raise your hand if you've seen a negative ad about me. Okay. I want to tell you something about this. Those negative ads, they come because they're coming out of the state. It's for nearly $3.5 million in negative ads to try to get people to not vote for me. Here's a really interesting fact. This campaign has been funded by people. We have raised more resources and donations from Nebraskans than any candidate that's ever run in this district, ever, including my opponent who was just here before. Actually, most of his campaign donations are actually from companies and out of the state. It's very, very clear to me who is trying to represent everybody and who's really trying to represent working class families. And for my opponent, unfortunately, and I bet you he said this, I bet you he tried to make this more about why you shouldn't vote for me. Now here's the thing, there's really clear differences between us on policy. I would never have gotten elected to leadership or getting elected to the legislature or getting more than 60 bills passed across the aisle if I wasn't able to build relationships and focus on this state. I wouldn't have been getting awards nationally for actually building civic leadership or from AmeriCorps or even from the Bush and the Clinton foundations for being one of the leaders nationally across this country. But the reason why I'm standing in front of you here running for Congress is because the reason why I don't want you to vote for the other person is because what I would do differently, not just to scare you out of voting for him. He has taken more than $500,000 from corporate lobbyists, the insurance industry, drug industry, and that's the reason he voted against lowering prescription drug costs. I would vote to lower prescription drug costs because I know they're expensive. I hope none of you have to have the high price of prescription drugs, because if you did, I would vote to lower them. He has voted against and voted no on lowering them. When it comes to lowering insurance premiums, I don't care if you have your independent health care or you're for the business or you're on a plan. Either way, I would have lowered your insurance premiums. He voted against lowering your insurance premiums. And when it matters the most, to providing an actual tax relief to working parents, and I'm speaking as one. I have 2 little kids. I have a 3.5-year-old daughter, Ava, and I have a 1.5-year-old son, Luca. I care whether or not the public safety is important, whether or not we're putting money back in people's pockets and making childcare more affordable, not more expensive. Unfortunately, my opponent voted against a middle-class tax cut that would have affected you. But the thing that he did say, which I'm assuming, I've had enough conversations, he probably said he voted for a tax cut. You know where most of those tax cuts went to? Most of those tax cuts went to the ultra-wealthy and to corporations. Any of the tax cuts that went to working families like yourselves have ended. He prioritized them over us. The reason I'm running for Congress is because there are not everyday people in Congress these days. As a citizen legislature, as one of the state senators, I make $12,000 a year and work other opportunities to build relationships with my colleagues to get things done. And unfortunately, he is more worried with trying to scare people out of voting than standing on his own ideas. It's very clear we need different voices in Congress. We need different voices in government. Not only voices of color, voices from different socioeconomic levels, from working class backgrounds, working parents, because if we did, every time that there's an opportunity to stand up for working class families, every single time, I'd stand up for them, not stand behind them, and not try to play politics and tell you one thing just to win your vote. That's why I'm running for Congress. That's why I'm asking for your support. And that's why it means so much that you are here today, because you believe in the half is glass full. You believe in your own leadership development. You believe in entrepreneurship. You believe in new ideas. But I'm going to tell you this, we can't change this country's division. We can't change our community and our state and its democracy for better if we continue to send people to Congress that want to play politics as usual, or that want to divide us. I don't want to divide us. I want to figure out how we can unite us and actually get things done. Because as a young father from an immigrant family, doing the things that I did happened because of the work ethic and actually believing it can be different. And so I'm asking you to believe it can be different. I'm asking you to talk to your friends, talk to your family. This election is way more important than it can ever be, because we can elect somebody to Congress that has a record of doing these things because they come from a working class background. And they've gone through many of the struggles that you have. So that's my ask to you. Talk to people. Share with them what I shared with you today on how I'm going to actually lower healthcare costs, invest in education and jobs, put in actual tax relief for middle-class families on your behalf, and work across the aisle to do that. Spread the word. Because that's the way that we get past all the negativity in those ads. Because it only tells me one thing. They're afraid. They're afraid that a different type of voice and somebody from a working class background will step up and be a representative for this district. And so I need your help. Thank you so much for being here. I hope I can earn your vote. I hope I can earn your support. And if you want to get involved, please come and talk to me, talk to my staff over there. Grab it before I leave, before you hear from wonderful Carol Blood, my colleague in the state legislature, because I need all your support and voices. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much, Senator Vargas. If you can take some few questions.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Senator Vargas, nice seeing you again. Luis Lucar, I work for the Harlem Workers Center. Been involved, I live in the United States for about 30 years. I'm an immigrant, as you can tell, originally from Peru. Yes, we made it.
That's right.
Yes. And also been involved a lot with agricultural people in the state of Nebraska. So I kind of understand a little bit about the problematic around agriculture. So what do you think? What is your vision about the low, the lack of workers, especially in the agricultural side of the business? Again, what you take, what your solution, what you see as to work on that?
So one, I'll tell you, agriculture is our #1 industry. And even though I've been a state senator representing the more urban part of Nebraska, this is the more urban part, right? Urban, suburban. I think the misconception of state senators like myself haven't been learning as much as possible about rural Nebraska. And agriculture is our #1 industry because we've invested in it over time. It's been a historical part of our footprint as a state, and we're important for our trade, important in the region. I want to continue to support that. Here's how I think we can and we should do it. We need to continue to make sure that rural Nebraska is not disappearing. And for those of you that have seen this across the state, we've had a lot of diminishing population in areas. I've worked across the aisle to invest in healthcare access and rural workforce housing to make sure that we're keeping communities invested in across Nebraska. Even though it wasn't directly impacting my district, it's the right thing for our state because it's about our economy. It also is right because if you look all across the state, the most growing populations that we have in the agriculture industry and manufacturing to this point are immigrants. And many, many different walks of life beyond immigrants and refugees that are working. I want to make sure we continue to invest in our education sector and continue to invest in our higher education and two-year community colleges so we can get more people into the pathways that get them into a good job, which also includes in the agriculture industry. Because it's also changing. There's a part that's becoming much more, not industrialized, but because of STEM and advances in technology, it's becoming more efficient, which also means sometimes less jobs. At the end of the day, I think we can grow our state. And the best way to do that is to make sure we're continuing to elevate the people that are here, making sure we're providing pathways for people to be more contributing members of our community, investing in ag technology, and investing in the education so people are ready and prepared to be in this industry. We cannot let go of rural Nebraska. We have to keep investing into it as much as we're also investing in urban Nebraska.
Any other questions?
Oh, hey, Tony. Lina Tozaminia Stover with the Harlem Worker Center as well, where we represent immigrant and underrepresented communities. So I'll ask the same question that I asked the previous person, Don Bacon, not Doctor. He talked about immigration and the importance of securing the border. And I hear you talking about investing in the institutions that are welcoming immigrants. What do we need to do to make our immigration, I'm not gonna say right, because it is a system of exclusion regardless, but what do we need to do to make sure that immigrants in the state of Nebraska do well?
Okay. So, I'm going to make an assumption on how my opponent phrased this. It sounds like he talked about securing the border, and then he talked about supporting DACA, and then he probably talked about supporting legal immigration. Now, here's one thing I'll say. I support legal immigration. I support an earned pathway to citizenship. And I also support making sure we're doing everything we can to make sure our borders and public safety is prioritized. However, the only but here is if we continue to send people to Congress that view this as a partisan issue or blame an administration and say it is their fault, we're never going to get to a solution. Immigration is not something that is a bartering chip or a tool. It is about meaningful reform that is compassionate, pragmatic, and humane, grows our country, and does it in a way that creates a real earned pathway to citizenship for families, just like it did for my family. And for those of you that have seen what immigration really looks like in the nitty-gritty on how long it's taken to get your case processed versus even 10 years ago, or whatever your legal status may be, even when you're just trying to get in a pathway to status, whether or not it's TPS or not, or any other type of special immigrant juvenile status, it is difficult. It costs a lot of money, and it is very, very onerous, and it is emotionally consuming. We can't expect a different solution. It's clearly, and this is me coming as somebody that is a registered Democrat, Democrats and Republicans have not been able to solve the solution. The ones that are sitting in Congress right now still haven't been able to solve it. I'm not telling you that one person changes everything, but if we continue to send the same people to Congress that continue to spend years and years using this as a reason to talk about scaring you instead of actually solving a problem, we've all been part of solutions. Send somebody new in that actually has experience of dealing with this firsthand, because I'm the son of immigrants, but also somebody that has seen what happens when we make the right investments in our state. We can be a better state and a better economy if we do more in this area. So send somebody new there, because it's clearly not working with the people that we have. It's definitely not working with our clearly incumbent congressmen, because instead they come with some solutions. When I'm at the table, it doesn't matter if it was for working on tax relief or cutting costs. I want to at least be part of the solution and do everything I can to sit down and listen to all sides and be educated on it. But right now, we have to actually get educated and work across the aisle to get a solution here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? We good? One more? Okay.
How you doing, Tony?
Good to see you.
Yes, sir. Every time I come into this type of space, I never hear the conversation around mass incarceration. And I would like to pose that question to you. What are you planning on doing about the criminal justice system as it is now locally as well as nationally to address so many black and brown folks being locked up?
Well, one, we need to make sure that we realize that there actually is a problem in the first place. Look, there's an overrepresentation of our black and brown individuals within our criminal justice system and within our prison system. That is the data, that's what it tells us. It is absolutely fact. And again, I'm probably making the assumption here that some of the ads that you see or even what you hear from Congressman Bacon is more about scaring you about our public safety. I don't think there's an either or here. I think we can make sure to make our correction system more efficient and humane, that makes sure that people are coming back into the community and have a pathway to have a job and be contributing member of society. And there's a way to make sure that we're looking at how people are getting into the system in the first place. We've got to reach them really early. As a former teacher, I've seen, and as a former school board member, we see what happens when kids get into the juvenile justice system. A lot of this is preventative. We all take responsibility for doing a lot more to invest in them. We all take a lot of responsibility to do a lot more to make sure there's more pathways for them to be able to graduate with a high school degree. My record in the legislature has been working on trying to spend less on our prison system, but still maintaining and doing everything we can to invest in it efficiently. I've actually funded every single time that they've requested the resources for people in the prison system. But I think we can make sure our funding is more efficient when we're talking about the people that we send there. At the end of the day, at the federal level, our responsibility is to look at this solution at the federal level and say, what can we make sure to do to keep our community safe and invest in people, and realize that when people have done wrongdoing in this country, I also want them to come back and be contributing members of their community and society and make sure we invest in rehabilitation for them. It has been shown to work. It's what I've done in the legislature, but it does not mean it's at an expense of our public safety. Both of those things are possible. And so I want to make sure we continue to invest in our public safety, our law enforcement. We can make sure we're more efficient and humane with our correction system, and we can do both those things and not make it about politics and blaming one side or the other. My best evidence is that's how we've worked on most of the solutions we've been able to do in the legislature. And I hope we can do more at the federal level.
All right, thank you so much, Senator Tony Vargas, for your time. Any question? Okay. So we have a translation here too, so if you guys let us know, okay, you can translate for you.
¿Cómo usted en el Congreso podría de alguna manera obrar o trabajar en cuestión a inmigrantes que tienen bastante tiempo en el país y por ser mexicanos, obviamente no sé por qué los mexicanos, pero usualmente los mexicanos hay más dificultad para alcanzar una residencia, o sea, aquí sería la ciudadanía, ¿no? Pero, ¿qué es lo que va a hacer para que no haya división de países? O sea, en general, cuando se trata de un crimen, mexicanos, pero cuando se trata de algo legal, los mexicanos son los que están hasta en el último lugar para un estatus migratorio. O sea, ¿qué se puede hacer en ese caso para que, o sea, ya con años, 30 años aquí, de estar viviendo y sin ningún récord criminal, o sea, se sigue lidiando con eso de que por ser mexicano, ¿sabes qué? A la cola. O sea, yo creo que eso, pues, tiene que haber una solución, ¿no?
Thank you. No, I understand the question, but I know you got to translate it for everybody else. Yes. So the summary of this is, how can we actually get a solution so people that have been here long-standing and who are from Mexico actually have a pathway to solving this issue? I feel like it hasn't been solved, and it hasn't been solved for you, it hasn't been solved for many people, and especially for people that don't have criminal records and want to actually, become a citizen here. Did I miss something?
Yes,
Okay.
and she says she has 30 years here.
30 years.
She's been here for 30 years and she doesn't have record, and how she gonna fix it that, or what you gonna do for fixing that?
Well, I appreciate your question, and this is the best answer I can give you. We can't fix it unless we keep sending people that make this about politics. We just can't. I want to go there and I want to work on a solution that's going to make it easier. Quiero trabajar para hacer todo lo que puedo hacer, pero yo no puedo hacer nada si they don't want to elect. If we don't get elected, if people that don't want to make it a solution, if we do get elected, yes. So the point I'm trying to make is nobody can do it on their own. We're going to have to sit down with all sides of the aisle and figure out a solution for improving this, especially for cases like yours, which shouldn't be the case.
Like on a criminal way, let's say something happened and right away they imagine it's a Mexican at the time, but it was not. But this is an example. But in question on legal questions, why Mexicans has to be back of the line instead of being thrown like the same way as criminals, because Mexicans are the only one criminals. But question of trying to fix your status, then you know what? You are Mexican and you have to go on the back of the line because we have other countries they need to be fixed first. But that is not right. We're talking about right things, then we should be treated even over here. Because Mexicans are we try to say Mexicans are the problem when, like you said before, as Hispanics, we are the ones make the country run as well. We are not the criminals. We are just the ones who is pushing the country goes forward instead of back. That is the thing. I just want to know how or when or why all these happen. When it's one Congress and another Congress, it's this president and the other president, but the issue is still the same.
I think you just said your answer, and that is the answer. We keep sending people to Congress. I think we forget with all the 400 plus members of Congress, if we elected more people that wanted to solve the problem and wanted to be part of many of the solutions that can happen, it would improve. For every single person in this room, how many people are planning on voting this November 8th? I think we forget every single one of these seats across this country matter on whether or not we solve some solution, matter on whether or not they work with any administration, Democrat or Republican, to hear more of your stories and to do something. The person that I'm running against has been in this seat for 6 years. Have been working to create a solution, and you heard them talk that they don't want it to be different. I do want it to be different. But unless we elect different leaders, especially different leaders that come from values of working families, or an example of what it looks like, just like you and many of you, on when we invest in people, it's not going to get better. My only commitment that I can make to you is I can't do it by myself. But if you trust me and can elect me, I'll be part of a different voice of individuals that want to actually solve this and are willing to work on it rather than just talk about it for 6 years. So that's my commitment to you.
Thank you so much.
Miss Carol.
So, okay, just one last question. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you for taking my question. My question for you is, what you plan to do with all these college kids, they get out from college, they already graduated, to keep it in Omaha, not to live from Nebraska, because a lot of these kids, they graduated and they go to other country, to other states. So what you plan to do with them, that way we can keep them in Omaha?
So we do lose a lot of people that leave Omaha, unfortunately. My answer is a little easier here, is we need to make sure that this state, we continue to make it a place that people want to raise their families and stay here. Unfortunately, a lot of people leave because they think other cities are better cities because they're more inclusive, they have more job opportunities, and they also feel like it reflects the real diversity of our country. I often hear that. One of the best ways that we can do is continue to improve the types of job opportunities that we have here in this community. We have some great job opportunities, but we need to make sure that there's enough so that people can stay here and want to see a future. We need to continue to invest in education and public safety and our schools. It's going to make sure people have to see themselves so that they can have a future here with their kids. That's what I see when I'm talking with my wife about our kids. This is why this is our home. And we also need to make sure that we start electing people into leadership positions and see more examples of what our community really looks like. I can tell you this much. Electing somebody to Congress that is a working parent, that is the son of immigrants, that comes from a working class background, that has served this community and been an example of it, sends a message that everybody in this community is welcome, not just one different voice. Right now in Congress, there are more millionaires in Congress than there are working parents. There are more millionaires in Congress than there are people of color. We only change that when we vote. And so I hope that when some of the youth continue to see more examples of themselves in leadership, in entrepreneurship, in small businesses, in doctors, and lawyers, and nurses, and paraprofessionals, and whatever it may be, and then also in elected leaders in Congress, they start saying, this is a community that I want to stay in, and I want to be part of continuing to make it better. But if we continue to not see this opportunity for real representative leadership, I think it's going to make it easier for people to leave. So a good job, our schools, public safety, education, and making sure we're acting the kind of leadership that will make this a more welcoming place for people to come to and to stay is what I want to invest in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So just like, thank you, Marco, and thank you for all being here. The only thing I'd ask for you, I've already asked for your support and your vote, and that really would mean a lot. Because this is one of the top races across the country. They're watching this. They're watching it because in the state of Nebraska, they want to see if history can be made. I think it can be. We can send somebody that comes from a working class background, son of immigrants, and somebody that has a record of getting things done across the aisle to make this community better. And that doesn't want to tear us apart and doesn't want to blame the other side and doesn't want to make this about politics as usual. And so that's why I need your help. Please vote on November 8th. I know you're going to do that. Please volunteer. Sign up at tonyvargas.com if you want to donate. That will help us. It'll fuel our campaign. And talk to your friends and your family. Talk to them because you're going to be the best people to talk about me and what you just heard. And that is going to counteract the millions of dollars of negative ads that you see. Because we are Nebraskans and we are much better than that. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Senator Tony Vargas. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Senator Carol Blood.
Well, good evening, friends. I love it when you respond. Thank you. Sometimes they just look at me like I'm a foreign object. We're going to have fun. So my name is Senator Carol Blood, and I am currently running to be your next Nebraska governor. I was born in McCook, Nebraska, and I was raised on a farm in Adams County, Nebraska. And I raised my own family here on this end of the state in Sarpy County, Nebraska. I have 3 adult children and 10 beautiful grandchildren. By trade, I'm a business consultant. I write business plans and feasibility assessments So research is kind of my jam. I love to do research, and if you watch me on the floor of the legislature, you know that I research everything. I don't rely on other people to tell me what to think or what to believe. I believe in science, facts, and data. So I have known since my 4th grade tour of the Capitol. Did anybody go to grade school in Nebraska? Remember the 4th grade tour when they took you to the Capitol? That was the day I decided I want to be a Nebraska state senator. So, first I had to raise my family, because I couldn't see driving back and forth between Lincoln and Sarpy County. It just didn't seem like it was a good fit for my family. So I went into my youngest was in high school, and I decided first to run for the Bellevue City Council. And I served 8 years on the Bellevue City Council, and I worked very hard and brought in a lot of new progressive ideas to our community and helped our community move forward. And then I ran for the Nebraska legislature, and I did beat an incumbent to do so. And then I ran for a 2nd term and won again. And then I was going to stop. I was never going to run for governor. I was going to never run for Congress. But I knew that I was going to keep being active in my community, because I've always been an activist. I've always been very engaged in my community for decades, because I do believe that one person can and does make a difference. And you have to put your money where your mouth is. So I was going to have a lot to do after I was done running, serving office in the legislature. I wasn't worried about what my life was going to hold. But then I watched the primary election. Anybody watch the commercials during the primary this election cycle? Yeah, especially for governor, right? This us versus them narrative, right? It was never about what you should vote for. It's always what you should vote against. And I call it smoke and mirrors. It's a magic trick, right? I want you to look up here. And I'm going to tell you everything that I want you to be scared of, right? I'm going to give you misinformation. I'm going to tell you the things that I want you to be scared of. I want to tell you the things that I want you to be angry about. Because if I do that, I never have to solve the real problems that face everyday Nebraskans like you and I. And you know the really sad thing? It works. It works. Because in Nebraska, we keep letting people buy their way into office. And we keep voting for more of the same. And then we're surprised when we get more of the same. And so I decided to throw my hat into the ring. Because at the very least, I want to be the adult in the room. Right? I want to show people that there are folks that can run for office without trying to buy their way in, who do it the old-fashioned way, which is knocking on doors, making phone calls, talking to folks face-to-face, and that look like us. We're like the working class. Because you know what, friends? You know who carries the biggest tax burden in Nebraska? Is it the wealthy? No, it's the working class. We carry the biggest tax burden in Nebraska. It's on our backs. And it's time that we start talking about it. Because what always happens during election cycles is they tell you they're going to cut your taxes, right? Let's start with property taxes. I'm going to talk about the 4 pillars I'm running on. I'm running on 4 pillars. The first one is prosperity for all. And since we have limited time, I'm going to give you little mini versions of each pillar. When I say prosperity for all, that's where I talk about property tax. Because there's a big lie when it comes to property taxes that you guys all pay. Do you know that we have known for 25 years how to lower your property taxes? We had research done when Ben Nelson was governor that said until we stop unfunded, underfunded mandates and we fully fund our schools in the state, we will never have property tax relief. Do you know what an unfunded mandate is? It's when the legislature makes a law and passes the cost down to local government. Now, you'll probably hear really soon commercials coming out that say we need to cap local government, they need to tighten their belts. But you'll never hear anybody take responsibility at the state level, do you? Ever. It's always somebody else's fault. Well, friends, I'm here to tell you today, it is the state's fault. We're the ones doing it. And I truly believe They don't really want to lower your property taxes or any other taxes, by the way. Because goodness, what would they run on every 2 years when they run for re-election? Have you ever seen a candidate run on anything but taxes? Really, in Nebraska? I haven't. Smoke and mirrors. We also have 18 to 34-year-olds that are lacking generational wealth. People in my generation and older generations had the ability to build wealth. There are ways that we can do this, helping to keep our young people here in the state. Who was it? That was you back there, right? All right. Young people in the state. One of the ways we can do that is help them build generational wealth. This doesn't require tax dollars. This requires public-private partnerships to show people, especially that have gig economies, where they're working without benefits at home, that for $5, $10, or more a month, we can help them build wealth that they can pass down to other generations. I think this is even more important for our Black and brown communities to make sure that we start equalizing their opportunities here in our state. So the next pillar that I'm running on is infrastructure. It's more than roads and bridges. It's more than broadband. Those are all important. It's also about the properties that we own, the buildings that we own. One of them is in the Nebraska State prison system. Let's talk about that. We put aside money to build a new prison, but friends, we can't build our way out of the prison overcrowding that we have in Nebraska. Our state has the most overcrowding in the prison system than any state in the whole United States. And I want you to know that I actually worked maximum security for 6 years in the state prison system, so I have a little different view than a lot of policymakers do. I always remember one time I was running the yard at LCC, and a young person of color came up to me, and we were talking about why they were in there. And I said, gosh, it doesn't sound like you should have gotten that long a sentence. And he said, you know, Mrs. Blood, that's because there's no justice, there's just us. And that has always resonated with me every time we talk about prisons. If you watch the legislature, you know I talk about it on the floor. That when it comes to the overcrowding in our prison system, we have a lot of people of color that are in for non-violent offenses. And so the way we solve this isn't building more prisons. The way we solve this is, first of all, to address the justice system. Why is this happening? Which we know why it's happening. And then we need better pretrial diversion programs. We need more veterans courts, more drug courts, more courts for people that are young and don't have the income that they need to defend themselves in court. We need to make sure and keep people out of prisons, keep them on the streets, get them the services that they need, because it costs us $50,000 a year to incarcerate somebody. Wouldn't we rather spend half as much? Because one day friends are going to be your neighbors. I would rather have people have an opportunity to get the mental health help they need, to get the help in reference to drugs that they might need, in reference to violence. They may have anger control issues. We don't, I mean, for me where I live, PTSD is a real thing because I have a lot of veterans in my district. And we have veterans courts, but not enough either. If we can keep people out of incarceration and we give them the true help that they need, we can start closing down prisons as other states have done. But if indeed they are not nonviolent offenders and they do face incarceration, we need to rehabilitate. Here's what I know. If you look at the data in Nebraska, people believe that others should be punished if they commit crimes. We can accept that. But that almost exact same percentage thinks they're being rehabilitated in the prison system, which they are not, and they haven't been since like the 80s. And you know why? This weird cutting that Nebraska does. That's how we budget. We don't plan, we cut. And then we brag to you that we cut the budget and then make you the collateral damage. Over and over again. And I have a lot of examples of that too, friends. So if we can rehabilitate them, we can also get them out of prison sooner. Because we don't want them to jam out. We want to give them the opportunity to step out. But we also need better bridging programs as well. Because if you continue to put people in the same environment where they have had issues, it's not benefiting our neighborhoods, our friends, our families, if we don't help them bridge into the community as well. If we can do these things, we can slow down that revolving door of recidivism. And then we can better address what's going on in our courts. So infrastructure is more, again, than bridges and roads and broadband, which are all important. It's also taking care of what we have and making sure that it functions properly with your tax dollars. So education is my third pillar. I believe in a PK through 14 education. I want to make sure that we pass universal child care. We were just talking about keeping young families in Nebraska. Universal child care is going to be one of them. They do that in Oklahoma. They do that in Colorado. We can do that without raising taxes. We know, especially when we're talking about rural depopulation, that part of that is because they cannot find good child care. Who cares if we have jobs there? If you can't find child care for your family, why would you stay? That includes affordable housing. And by the way, that's a shell game right now. You know that, right? We've invested in workforce housing. But workforce housing is not affordable housing. Affordable housing is 30% of your income. Workforce housing is, hey, I know you live in a town of 3,000 people, but we're going to build you a house that you can't afford, and now you're going to be stuck in there, and good luck on buying food and paying for childcare. We have put tens of millions of dollars into workforce housing, but not affordable housing. Now, I will say, since I've been in the legislature, we are now tracking that and making communities now report back to the legislature so we can change that. But don't be fooled when they put fancy names on things, friends. Workforce housing is not affordable housing. So, universal child care, and when I say K through 14, that means that any high school senior will have the ability to go to community college for a 6-month certification, for a 1-year degree, for a 2-year degree in IT, healthcare, ag, insurance, you name it. And the trades, don't want to forget the trades. But why we want to do that is because we want young people to walk into a job that has fair wages, that has benefits, that has retirement. Remember we talked about building generational wealth? So many jobs nowadays don't offer appropriate retirement. And we don't want people living off of their Social Security when they retire. We don't want more people, and we're seeing this more and more in the middle class, where people have to work in their 70s and 80s because they didn't have retirement when they were employed. That's not fair and that's not right. And I don't want that for our young people. And so we want to make sure that we, for our young people, give them the opportunity to get out of school and get educated and not have any college debt. Now, friends, I'm not saying 4-year degree isn't okay. I'm just saying that that pathway is not for everybody. And that could be something they revisit at a later date, or they can take those 2 years and go on 2 more years to college, right? To like our university, but no debt. And we've put tens of millions of dollars into that infrastructure. We don't need to use tax dollars to pay for this. So it kind of makes sense that we use the investments that we already have as opposed to constantly trying to reinvent the wheel. Think of all the times you've read the newspaper, watched the news, or watched the legislature, and they're like, well, we want to do a study on it. How many times have prison overcrowding, taxes, workforce housing, how many times have we researched that since we've all been alive? More times than I can count. What do we usually do with those studies? We shelve it until you forget about it. And then when you bring it up again, what do? We'll have another study. But we never actually pull the trigger on it. So I also think we need to fully fund our schools. We have no equity when it comes to how schools are funded here in Nebraska. We use something called the TIOSA formula, which is antiquated and does not work. Only 1/3 of our schools are funded by the state. The other 2/3 of our schools are funded through property taxes. So in rural areas, that means they are most dependent on the wealthiest landowners. Which may sound okay, but that's not fair and equitable. So we need to do something about how we fund our schools. We also need to work really hard on protecting our educators. When did we become a state where it was okay to demonize our educators? We've lost respect for our teachers, we've lost respect for our schools, and we've done more smoke and mirrors because it's an election cycle to try and scare people about issues that are not issues in our public schools. Don't be fooled by those smoke and mirrors, right? And then lastly, I'm gonna get out of the light here. Lastly, the fourth pillar that I have, and I lost track of it because I'm doing it out. Maintaining public health and public safety. We need to make sure that we have the training necessary, that our law enforcement can work with our communities. I'm a big fan of community policing and building relationships, but I'm also a big fan of making sure that our mental health facilities are available for law enforcement, because when someone is having a mental health crisis, we've seen, especially in the Omaha metro area, that people die. We want to make sure that we have someplace safe for them to go, which we do not have right now. We're in a mental health crisis in Nebraska. We have children out in western Nebraska that we can't even take over to Wyoming because we owe millions of dollars to a facility there. We have adults and children dying. We have no place to take somebody that's having a mental health crisis that endangers them, endangers the community, and it endangers law enforcement. And they'll be the first to tell you that they are not psychologists. And I don't want anybody else to get hurt or killed. But right now, the only option they have is that if they are lucky, they'll find a bed for that person for 2 to 3 days. And after day 2, they're gonna say, Bobby, you've been here for 2 days, we've changed your medication. Do you promise you're gonna take your medication? And what's Bobby gonna say? Yeah, I'll take my medication. And Bobby gets back out on the streets. And what happens again? It's a revolving door, and we never help Bobby. And then what happens? Often it escalates, and then Bobby gets sucked into the criminal system, into the jails or into the state prison. Is that where Bobby belongs? No, because we don't have the facilities in the state prison to help him either when it comes to people with mental health or, frankly, any other health issue. We don't have enough doctors and nurses in the prison system. And we haven't for a very long time, by the way, friends. So we have to deal with our mental health crisis. We have to make healthcare accessible to everybody. We have to continue to expand our telemedicine, and we have to recruit more people to work in the healthcare industry. By the way, for those that are my age, because we have some young people in here, anybody read the newspaper or watch the news 20, 25 years ago? Raise your hand. Just raise your hand. Okay. Do you remember 25 years ago when they told us there was going to be a workforce shortage because the baby boomers were going to age out? How did Nebraska plan for that? They didn't. And they don't plan for anything. And then when we have a crisis, what do? We're an ATM and we throw money at it. Right? I want you to keep that in mind, because usually I talk for much longer, but I think I'm only getting 15 minutes today, right? I was originally scheduled for half an hour, but I would love for you guys to go to electcarolblood.com. I have a blog, I talk about some of those things, but more importantly, go to the media page, and you can hear me in these environments that are very comfortable environments where I'm not talking from cue cards, I don't have a handler in my ear. It's a very organic situation. I ask you to please take like half an hour and watch one of those and learn more about who I am and what I stand for. And the thing I'm going to end with is I want to note that you'll see that I'm pretty sure my opponent's not coming tonight. My opponent will not debate me. My opponent will not come when there are people of color. If you look on his social media, it's a bunch of old white guys. I'm not sure what he's scared of, but I want you to take that message that he refuses to put himself in uncomfortable situations. He refuses to debate me, clearly because I'll kick his ass. I needed to lighten the mood. You guys looked way too serious. We usually have have more fun in my town hall, so you needed to laugh a little bit. But seriously, and if I offended anybody by using the word ass, you can tell my mom later, so. But the point is, friends, and you just heard Tony say it, until we start electing people that are like us, that are middle class, that know what it's like to have one hospital bill that can put you out on the streets. Sometimes more than one, right? Time after time after time. That until it's somebody who has had to deal with the burden of taxes they put on the middle class, trying to figure out how sometimes we're gonna buy groceries that week. I don't know why we expect to get anything different when we keep voting the same over and over again. It can't be about party, it's gotta be about the people and the policy, not the party and the politics. And that, friends, is the Nebraska that I grew up in. We didn't care what your party was, we cared that you could do the job. And so I've run my campaign on 3% of what my opponent spent in the primary, which was around $10 million. He spent $10 million for negative ads, right? Misinformation. And I don't know what else. Maybe he bought a lot of parade candy, because I can't tell what he spent all this money on. But I can tell you that we have canvassed well over 300,000 Nebraskans. We have knocked on doors. We have made phone calls from Shadron and Alliance and Scottsbluff all the way back to Omaha, McCook, Falls City, you name it, we have been there. And boy, are we tired, by the way. But we're gonna keep doing this until November 8th. Because I have faith, and I need you to have faith, that we have better Nebraska. And we're gonna bring everybody to the table, no matter who you are, where you live, what you look like, or where you come from. And I have said that since day one. We're gonna have a strategic plan where we travel all over the state of Nebraska, and we'll have meetings like this in time periods where you can actually attend, not invite only, but we want Nebraskans to say, Carol, these are our top 3 priorities in this community. We're gonna narrow it down to 3 guys, sorry, because we're traveling everywhere. And then we're gonna take that data, we're gonna take that information, and we're gonna put together a statewide plan that has your voices in it. And then we're gonna mirror our budget to meet those priorities. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Do you know we don't have a plan in Nebraska? We just know how to cut, which is how you got prison overcrowding, which is how we got the St. Francis contract, which is how the people in Saunders County got poisoned by the alt-N plant in Meade, Nebraska. We gotta stop this, friends. And we can do this together, and we can do it using your voices to make a better tomorrow for all Nebraskans. And with that, I think it's time for Q&A.
Well, thank you so much. So we have a few questions. Do we have questions? Okay.
I have a question here.
Thank you so much. I think first time I'm interacting with you, and I'd like to say it's a breath of fresh air
Thank you.
for the Nebraska governorship position. My question is really short and simple. Would you follow in lockstep with the president in pardoning individuals that were incarcerated for marijuana use in the Nebraska city? Since we're talking about mass incarceration, is that something you would consider if you do get elected as governor?
Yeah, we would definitely consider making sure that, first of all, we put in legislation because we don't want to just do it after the fact. We want to prevent it from happening in the future as well. And then we need to keep our nonviolent offenders out of prison because they don't belong there. And marijuana is not a violent offense, right? So yes, I actually have grave concerns that if we don't do that, we're headed for a crisis we can't pull out of.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yes, sir. Questions? Okay.
Hello.
Hello, how are you tonight?
I'm good. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
So I'm going to tie back to his question, and I'm going to ask, you talk about a plan that, we'll have all of our voices in there.
Yes.
So I want to know what do you have planned, literally, for those, when it comes to rehabilitation, for those that get out of, the jail system, the prison system?
Right.
Because she's there, but some of us have to work with those that come out and struggle because it's nothing for them to do. Because society is not always welcoming them, so I just want to know more about that.
Sure. So first we need to keep pushing for ban the box. That's something we've tried multiple times in the legislature. We need to start educating people that being tough on crime is rehabilitating people. I think that's been part of our issue, is that our messaging sucks. We talk about, someone commits a crime, lock them up, be tough on crime. But being tough on crime is lowering the recidivism rate and helping to make good stewards, better stewards out of people that have been incarcerated. So when we ban the box, we allow people to apply for jobs without saying, I'm a felon. Because we know in other states they have done that, and that has increased their opportunities to find better paying jobs. Part of rehabilitation, I think, should also be job training. And again, we used to do that in the 80s. Do you remember when OCC had telemarketing? Anybody remember that? Do you remember that? Yeah, and they actually got paid pretty decently as opposed to some of the other jobs that they did. Well, because telemarketing nowadays, depending on which company you work for, has a decent living, especially if you're trying to bridge from, I do it, but maybe that's the middle class in me and the farm girl in me. But we can teach them the trades in prison. And we used to. So that's the issue too, is that we used to do a really good job of rehabilitating. And then we've had 3 governors that cut. And when they cut, they say, just cut your budget. We don't care where you cut it, just cut it. And what happened? We became overcrowded and we stopped rehabilitating. So we always know education is important. And we always have helped, and they still help people get their GEDs, get their high school diplomas, but that's not enough. So we need to make sure that we include education, that we include job training, and that we include mental health, anger control, drug and alcohol help, because people have different reasons for being incarcerated. But a lot of them have reasons that we could have caught. You know how I talked about the PK through 14 education? If we can provide universal childcare, good childcare where we can really help our young people, because there's red flags. If you have, there are red flags that you can find when a child is younger than 5, especially when it comes to family violence, right? Sometimes we can help those families because we know that they're struggling somehow, at least offer the help. Cycles of poverty. Nebraska, we actually encourage poverty. Because if you listen to the debates on the floor of the legislature, like we'll talk about families that get SNAP, right? And you hear silly things like, well, if Bobby would just get off the couch and get to work, he wouldn't need SNAP. Well, the 80% of the families that use SNAP in Nebraska have 2 jobs or more. 2 jobs or more. So we want them to lift themselves up. But how are they going to apply for a job when they're working 2 jobs already? Who's going to watch their kids if they want to go back to school? We don't provide any resources to help people get out of poverty. So we need to rehabilitate, we need to have programming before and after. We need to start when they're young. And we need to find ways to lift people out of poverty, because wouldn't we prefer them to be paying more taxes in ours? Really logically, like they're going to be paying more taxes then too. But we don't allow that in Nebraska. We want you to stay in poverty, which I think is incredibly stupid, especially during the workforce shortage. Would you rather have them working a good paying job with benefits and retirement, or 2 part-time jobs with no benefits, having to depend on the state to feed their families? That seems crazy to me. Does it seem crazy to you? All right. So that's what I envision. And again, it's not about raising taxes or putting more money into it. It's about taking it and breaking it down and putting our money where it's going to be most useful. And it is not most useful to just incarcerate folks, period. My pleasure. The young man in the beard.
It's going to be your last question, is that okay?
He shook his head yes a lot, so I'm hoping it's something good. Yeah.
Hello. Very nice to officially meet you. I'm friends with Tony, so
All right.
I've heard a lot of nice things about you. I'm kind of like, yes, because those are all passion points. So I'm a community advocate, community champion. I want to talk about the school to prison pipeline because it's horrific at how bad it is in Omaha, but I think, just kind of segueing on your topic of SNAP, and these are conversations we have to have as a community together when we elect officials that can allow us to have these conversations. But the lack of nutrition or the lack of availability of nutrition, regardless of SNAP, EBT benefits, I think is astonishingly very, very alarming, especially in the community that I serve in North and South Omaha. Starting from there, if we can at least begin that conversation in school, at home, where it's actually affordable, and you can actually not feel segregated, feel like you're in a food desert. You know, eating healthy should not feel like is a financial right for the few and not for everyone. I really think it starts there, and learning a lot about nutrition recently, I feel that when we start there, we can actually get people, kids, individuals, and families to have these conversations about what are we feeding our kids, what are we feeding in the school, prison system. All these things of what we're putting in our body really can be detrimental when it's not nutritious, when it's not healthy. And then that feeds into the toxic cycle that society unfortunately is. So thank you for bringing up topics. Wish we could talk about them, but we have to elect officials that allow us, so.
Well, and I have to say, I concur